Hi Flosstube, I'm Annie and I'm the Proper Stitcher, and welcome to a special edition episode on how to finish a pillow pincushion ornament. And a lot of you have asked me to do this special video, and this is my first time doing or filming a tutorial. So I am hoping that we can figure this out because I would love to continue to do these tutorials. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you're returning, thank you for coming back. For those of you who are new, I am the Proper Stitcher, and my philosophy on cross stitch and finishing your projects and quilts is to just don't worry about things being perfect. Jump right in, finish it, and as you go through your finishing process, you will become better with each project that you complete. I have known so many people who would just cross stitch so many things and let them pile up in their boxes or bags and never finish it because they were always afraid of it not being perfect or not being as good as someone else's. And so once you remove that element of worrying about things being perfect, once you remove that from the process, then it takes the fear out of it and makes everything so much more fun. So I am going to transition and show you how I finished these pillow pin cushions from JBW Designs. I have stitched 3 of these you have seen, and I have finished them into these little pillow ornaments to hang on my tree. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how I finished the plum pudding pin keep. So watch the video. I hope you like it. Please keep in mind that this is the first time I've done this type of video. I did break my tripod in the process of making this video. So hopefully we'll have more of these. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Okay, so today I'm going to attempt to show you all how I finish my pin tuck pillows. And I wanted to show you how I do that with my JBW Designs plum pudding piece. So here's a little bit of what you need to do a stuffed pillow ornament, similar to these. So you will need your stitched piece, of course. You will need all of your cutting supplies. So I have a good pair of fabric scissors, a smaller pair of scissors in case I need to get in closer to something that I'm cutting, and a nice rotary blade with a sharp blade on it. You will also need your straight pins and interfacing. I have a bolt of interfacing here. Interfacing. 2 good rulers or 1 ruler, straight edge. Your Silver Mist poly-fil fiber for stuffing the pillow, and any decorative pieces you want to put on it. So here's my backing material, some ribbon, thread, and I've decided to pick some Christmas charms to go on my bow. So we'll pick one of those in just a moment. So that is all we need to get started. So give me 1 second. Okay, I have everything ready to cut. And the first step I did is I ironed my interfacing on the back. So I went to the ironed the interfacing on, and now I'm ready to cut this piece of fabric. And I want to do 1/2 of an inch all the way around, and that'll give it a similar look to this. And I'm just measuring from the furthest stitched piece, or this across, 1/2 an inch out from that. So on this side, it's going to be the plate. And the 1/2 inch mark on my ruler, I know, is this row of white dots. So I'm going to line up here on the 1/2 inch line. And I really want to make sure that everything is straight. So I'm going to pull it a little bit rather than moving my ruler, because I know I have it straight. And how I know that is my line is on the 1/2 inch line. I have lined up on the 21 line. And if I go like this, I can see that up here, it's over the 21 inch line on my cutting mat. So I know that's exactly 1/2 of an inch. So I'm going to cut. And there's the scrap piece. So then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to cut 1/2 an inch on this side. So here's my 1/2 inch mark. I'm gonna line it up right here. So I know that this is straight. I'm gonna pull this to meet up with it. Now this is not how I cut for quilting. This is just how I'm cutting for this cross-stitched piece. So I've got it lined up. I'm gonna check it twice, make sure my ruler didn't move, and I really don't have it lined up. Let me look again, because I don't want to mess up like I've done some others before. There we go. Okay, I am lined up and I'm ready to cut. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the top and bottom. So on here, this cross right here on this top hollyberry is where my 1/2 inch, or excuse me, my furthest stitch on the top. So I'm going to line it up with my ruler, make sure that I have it straight, and I do, and then I cut. There we go. And then I'm going to turn and do the bottom. So line up with the bottom, and I am not straight. I have done this before where I've had some wonky cuts, and I don't want that on this piece. So if you learn all the markings on your grids and your ruler, it is such a help for you. Okay, so let's get that lined up and cut. And there, that is our piece that we are going to now measure 1 inch strips all the way around. So I'll be right back. Okay, so now what I have done is I have pulled out my fabric of this French General Moda fabric, Joy Noel, that we all love, we've been talking about. And so I wanted to fussy cut the peppermint. I thought that the peppermint would be a good backing for the plum pudding. So I cut out the square around the peppermint piece, and I measured it to fit the back. So that's going to be our backing here. So I'm going to move this aside because I want to keep this piece as intact as possible, because I'm probably going to fussy cut some more of these squares for other ornaments. So I'm not going to cut my strips from this piece. I'm going to cut my strips from this piece. And so what I do is I cut 1 inch strips, and that is going to give us, when we sew it right sides together, it is going to give us 1/4 of a piece of fabric to see. So we're going to cut 1 inch strips. And what I do, just like when I cut the linen, I'm going to line up my piece, and this is not straight. So I'm going to line this up and cut this off to be a straight edge. So I've lined it up, and I'm just going to cut that little piece off right here. And then now I have a straight edge to start cutting my 1 inch strips. And actually I'm going to turn it around this way and cut from here. So here's my one lined up. First I'm going to line up the fabric so I know it's straight. And then I'm going to put my 1 inch marker on that edge because I know it's straight. So I've got that lined up, and I'm going to cut. There's my 1 inch strip. That is going to be probably enough for 2 sides. So I think we might get away with just having to cut 2 times. So let's do another 1 inch strip. And I've got it lined up, and I'm ready to cut. There. So now what I'm going to do is measure the sides. And this is sort of like when we're attaching quilt pieces. I am going to I'm going to do 2 sides together, sew them together, and then I'm going to take that measurement, cut a strip for the top and the bottom, and sew those together. So First thing is I want to see how long this is. So this is measuring at 4¼ inches. Let me double check that. That doesn't look right. Counting's hard for me, everybody. So this is measuring at 4�3/4. So I'm going to cut this at 4�3/4 of an inch. And I don't want this piece here because it got a boo-boo on the end. So 4�3/4. Let's get rid of this. And I'm going to cut that off right there. Okay, so 4�3/4. Let's see if we can do this right. So on here, on my ruler, this is measuring at 4½. 4�3/4 is right here. Is that going to be right? It looks right. All right. And cut it. And then I'm going to come over here and see, does it fit? And it's a little short, so I'm going to cut that a little bit more. It's more than 4�3/4, but not much. And cut. So that fits perfectly. So I'm going to pin that and cut another piece 4�3/4. Or a little bit more than 4�3/4. So line it up. And a little bit more. And cut. Okay, so I'm going to pin these right sides together. And here are my pins. So I'm going to pin these right sides together and then sew them on my sewing machine. I really like to pin because when you're working with something so small, it is so easy that when you take it from your cutting table to your sewing table for it to shift. And I just want to make sure that since these are small ornaments, I don't want to make too big of a mistake. So I've pinned it, and now I'm going to go and sew these two together. Okay, so I'm back from the sewing machine and from the ironing table. So I sew those right sides together on either side, and then I press the seam open. So there's my back. I have already realized I made a mistake. Because I've never done a tutorial video before, I just realized I cut this backing too soon because this is now going to be too small, because when we finish adding our sides, this is not going to fit. So this is not going to work for this piece. So lesson learned, right? So now let me cut for the top. And so what I'm going to do is measure the length of the length on either side from the top and the bottom. And it is measuring at, now it is measuring at 6�3/4. Make sure both sides are measuring the same. And this one is measuring at 6�3/4. So we're going to cut both sides 6�3/4 so we can then do our top and bottom. So I'm going to pull out my fabric here and cut my 1-inch strips. I'm going to line up my one here, make sure I've got this straight. And if you ever get to where you're not straight on the side of the fabric that you're using, then just cut just a little piece off, and it looks like I may not be straight. Let me see. So measure 1 inch. There you go. Measure 1 inch on either side, or excuse me, 1-inch strip. And I've got it lined up and cut. And let's see if this is going to be long enough to do both the top and the bottom. I'm just going to eyeball it to see if it is. And it is. So I'm going to measure, I'm going to now cut, what did I say? I've already forgotten. Is it 6 3/4? 6 3/4. So let's put this here, measure 6 3/4. And I have so many different size rulers. This probably is not the best one for this job, but it keeps me from having to pull them all out. So 6 3/4 and cut. And then 6 3/4 again. And cut. Okay. So now we're going to pin these together, do the same thing, take them to the sewing table and sew them together. And then we'll be right back to put on the backing. Okay, I'm back. So my little boo-boo that I made when I cut the fussy cut the peppermint piece is I cut it too small. I forgot to save this part for until after I got my sides on. So I've sewn the top and bottom on and ironed those seams open. And I'm really disappointed because I really wanted to use this for the backing, but I don't have another full motif of this on my fabric. So I'm gonna have to save this and use it for something else. So I fussy cut this motif to be the backing for plum pudding. So what we do at this point is we're going to sew the right sides together to make our pillow. And I'm gonna pin them down first. And I like to leave an opening in the top so I can stuff it through the top. So what I'm gonna do is use a reminder by pinning a start and stop pin at the top. So one here and one here. And then I'm gonna pin the sides. And this side, make sure that they're lined up. There we go, line them up and do all the way around the bottom. The bottom is a little longer, so I'm gonna do 3 pins down here. Oops. Okay, and then what I'm going to do when I take this to the sewing machine is I am going to start here and stop at this pin and do a back stitch. Cut my thread, start here, back stitch, and go all the way off to the edge. That's going to leave me an opening to turn this pillow inside out. Then when I turn and cut, I'm going to, turn to sew, I'm going to sew all the way down, a 1/4 inch seam all the way around for all of these, making sure that I cross the lines when I do that. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I've sewed them together. I have I pressed the seams to set my stitches. And now what I'm going to do is trim the corners so that when I turn this pillow inside out, we're gonna have, hopefully have nice corners. So you can take it and you cut as close to that cross as you can without cutting into the seam. And do all 4 corners. And now we're gonna turn it inside out. And so hopefully I left my opening big enough for this. So I usually go to one corner and pull through and then start working around. And keep pulling it through. And there we have our deflated pillow. So this is what it's gonna look, this is what it looks like before I start to poke through the corners. So I forgot to mention, you need either a chopstick or they make wooden sticks for turning corners. I have misplaced my good wooden one, so I've borrowed a chopstick from my kitchen. So you go through and you want to poke through those holes, or excuse me, you want to make sure that those corners are poked through so that when we go to stuff this, it is nice and even, and we have those nice pointed corners. So there's our outline of the pillow. Poke this little corner a little bit more. And it's going to be a pretty big size ornament, so this may actually end up being in a dough bowl, if not on a tree, or a pretty big space on my tree. And then I like to kind of take my stick and really make sure the side seams are open too. So I've done that, and now we're going to start stuffing our pillow. I'm not going to make you sit through all that, but what I'm going to do is show you, use a lot of your mountain mist. It's going to take a lot to fill this pillow. And so the key to getting nice full pillows without them being lumpy is you have to loft them. And this is what we mean by lofting. You have to really pull this mountain mist poly-fil apart so it's real fluffy, and then start stuffing it. And don't try to do too much at a time. You want to do a little bit at a time, because if you try to cram too much at a time, then you're not going to fill it evenly, and that's when you're going to get those lumps. So I'm going to start stuffing into the corner, and since this is a bigger pillow, I know I'm going to need to get more. So I just go through and I'm going to start lofting little pieces of it. And just really, this is a time-consuming task. So I'm going to do a few little stuffs with you, then we're going to pause, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to show you how it looks when we're done stuffing it. So with this chopstick, or a wooden stick that you can get from Hobby Lobby or Joann's or Michael's, you just start stuffing those corners, and you really want to start and work your way up to the top or to wherever your opening is. So always make sure you loft so you don't have bumps and lumps, and just start layering it and making little, I look at it like I'm filling a measuring cup up and up and up to the top, and just keep filling it. So we're gonna pause here. I'm gonna fill a little bit more, and then we're gonna be right back. Okay, so my tripod broke, so I had to sort of do a makeshift stand for my camera. So that's going to be fun. But in the process of doing that, I found my stick I was telling y'all about. This is the stick that I use to poke through the corners. It does look a lot like a chopstick, but it's a great tool, one that I highly recommend. So I have stuffed my pillow, and I'm going to give it a good feel to see if I like the way it is stuffed. I used pretty much all of that poly-fil I pulled out to show you. And I always make the mistake of not filling in the top enough. And then when I go to sew this closed, I've got a little dip in my pillow. So I'm trying to fill that up a little bit more so I don't do that again. So I think I've got it where I want it. And then I'm going to take my pins, and I am going to just sort of close these pieces together so that when I go to sew that closed, I already have those seams turned in. So I'm going to pinch just those two together. I think you can see what I'm doing. Do another pin, and then do a little bit more. And then we're going to do a stitch to close up the opening. So let me show you. Here's my thread, and I just picked a red thread that I thought was close enough to the red on this fabric. So I'm going to take a big piece, or a long piece, and I'm going to cut it, and then we're going to thread our needle and do a knot. So thread your needle, Oh, I can't see. I'm not using my magnifier. So, thread our needle. And tie a knot. Oh, hold on one second. Okay. There we go. Nope. Thread the needle and then tie a knot at the end. So I have it ready to start sewing this closed. So I like to start from the end, from this end closest to me, and then I pull it through. Oh, my knot came through. Hold on one second. Let me do that again. I think this thread is too small. Okay. All right, so let's start from the end and pull it through. Oh, I pulled too hard. And then that little tail, I'm gonna tuck down in there. And then I'm just gonna get just a little snippet of the fabric, and I'm going to sew this all the way close. Now, I try to make it as neat as I can, but I don't worry too much about it because the bow is going to hide most of my imperfections in my sewing. And I'm just taking a little bitty bit of the fabric as I go. And it is sewing it closed for me. So let's do a few more, and then I'll finish it up and come back and show you how I do the bow. So I do a little bit more. And I try not to go into too big of a rush, because then it's not a neat seam. And you just give it a pull as you go through, and that closes it. So I'm gonna get another little piece. I wanna make sure that there's the seam in there. Then I get another little piece. And then another. So I'm going front to back, and I'm always letting my needle go in the fabric from the inside of the seam so that it helps to close it as I pull it along. So you can see how it's closing up. So I'm gonna keep going with that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have sewn the top of the pillow closed, and it's a little, I messed up a little bit. It's a little, there's a little divot here, but I'm gonna hide that with the bow. So I just threaded my needle up, but I'm gonna need to thread it with a different thread. Hold on one second. I need to use this thread for this bow because it has the beige background. So I'm going to throw my needle, and I'm using this ribbon, or the rest of this ribbon to put on this pillow. So let's thread our needle. And again, I'm not using my magnifier, so it takes me a little bit longer to do this. So what we're going to do is, because this is a bigger pillow, I need to make a bigger bow. And so I'm going to kind of eyeball it and see how big I want this bow to be. So I'm going to go like, just play with it and see. And I think that's a pretty good size, considering the size of the ornament. So I am going to loop and make a rough image of a bow. And then I'm going to take my thread, my needle and thread. First, I'm going to pin that so I don't have to keep figuring it out. I can't pick up my needle on the mat. Okay, so we're going to get our thread and our needle, and we're going to give it a good knot. And I'm going to double up the string because I want it to be a little bit more secure. So knot it, and I'm not the best at making knots. Okay, so here's my bow, and I am going to put that where I want it and look at it again, make sure I like it. And now I'm going to go through with it, and I'm going to make sure I'm going through all 3 pieces of the bow, and I'm going from the back. And I'm going to just go in and out several times until it's all sewn together. And I try to go in and out within the same area. There we go. Oh, there we go. So go in and out through all 3 layers several times until I feel like it's secure. You can see I am going through all 3 areas. Okay, so I'm going to do this like 2 more times. And now, let me pull that through. I got a knot. There we go. And pull it through. Go. Oh, how did I do that? Okay. So then I'm going to let go and see if it holds it in place. And it does. I think I'm going to do one more though, just to be sure. One more time. And in. And now I'm going to take my thread. First I'm going to cut this now that I know I have it where I want it. I'm going to cut this. And wrap it around several times. Kind of pulling it tight and opening it as I go. So I've wrapped it around several times, and I want to make sure that I'm going right over the same piece. And then I'm going to come through the back and knot it off. And do a knot. Do that twice. Okay, and then I'm going to cut that, and we have a bow. So let me cut this extra string off. So this is the bow that I'm going to put right here. And now I'm going to take this. This is all I have left. So after this, I am not going to be able to use this ribbon anymore. So I want to sew this to the back. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get my string or my thread and tie a knot. And now I'm going to take this and not worry so much about how it looks because it's all going to be covered. So I'm going to go in and out and make sure I have all of those pieces. The needle's going through both of the strands. I'm going to do that several times. And I'm going to hide the back with a button. So that's all going to be hidden. So I think that's on pretty good. So now I'm going to pick one of my charms, figure out which one I want. And I have this bag of Christmas charms that I got from Sterling Jewelry Supply. And so I'm going to look through all of these. I don't think the bell is the best one, or the wreath. I think I'll save those for some others. Here's a Santa and a peppermint. I think I'm going to use the little gingerbread man. So I have him ready to go. And now I'm going to attach my bow. So I'm still attached to the string. And so I'm going to I've laid it down right on top of that loop. And I am going to now slide my charm on there. And so push it through. And I'm now attaching the bow to all of these layers. And I am going to just keep doing the same thing. I want to get that on a little bit better. So I'm going to come in through the hole of the charm and then back in through all the layers of the bow and that string and the pillow. So I'm going to do this several times until I know that I am attached to everything. And so I'm going to keep doing that several times. Making sure I don't get the ribbon in there. And there, I'm attached. So I'm going to just do a few more secure stitches back here because it is a heavier pillow and I just want to make sure. There. So now I'm going to knot it off, and I forgot to show you the buttons that I had. I have some buttons that I got from Hobby Lobby that are red and green, and I am going to use one of those to cover up the backing. So let me go get those and we'll be finished up. I'll be right back. The bow sewn on. There's the little gingerbread. There's the bow. And then here's the back. And I have my button that I'm going to glue on. And this is just Eileen's tacky glue, fabric glue. And I'm going to put a dot right there and place my button on it. And that will dry pretty soon. And then that's the back. So front and back. So I'm going to leave that turned upside down. And then now I have 4 pillows ornaments. So that is all I have for this pillow tutorial. Hopefully we all did okay with it. It will be a work in progress for me to work on these tutorials. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.